was when I went out that afternoon to collect donations, I took my daughter with me. And every time, most of the people that we picked up donations from were senior citizens. And every time a lady would come to the door with a pillow and a blanket to be donated, they'd see Lindsay, and Lindsay would get a cookie. She came along to help me carry things out to the car, and I didn't do it on purpose because I wanted her to see what people were doing in Gander, but I'm glad that I did, because it did her good to see what people were doing in Gander. After seeing on the TV some of the worst of what human beings can do to each other, she got the opportunity to see some of the best of what human beings can do for each other, reaching out to help each other in a time of need. That's as human as anything that's ever been done anywhere. And Gander had a lot of examples of that week.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember when you heard for the very first time about the play that David Hein and Irene Sankoff Hein are planning to make?
That would have been, I'm going to say, the 15th anniversary. The play was already in progress. It was I think in the final stages, and the playwrights and a number of other people again stayed at the hotel where I work on the 15th for the 15th anniversary commemorations, which of course included a large ceremony at the community center, and a lot of other events. So of course Captain Bass and her husband were back in Gander, and they stayed with us. The playwrights stayed with us. The folks from the Royal Alexander Theatre in Toronto stayed with us, and I got to meet all of these folks and interact with them somewhat, and so that was when I first heard that they had been working on this project, because of course they'd been working on that project literally for years at that point, and that they were almost ready to put it on stage, and it was I thought, this is, I'm not sure, how do you take something like that and turn it into a musical? And I think that reaction was probably not uncommon around town, but what a remarkable job they've done. The characterizations. As these folks did their interviews with the people who were involved here in Gander, they got these characterizations nailed down solid. When I saw the show done as a stadium show here, before it went to Broadway, there's a line in the play where Bonnie Harris is talking to her husband on the phone, and she makes kind of a snide remark, and I look around the auditorium, and everybody who knows Bonnie is nodding their head, because that's exactly what she'd have said to him. And I look around, and like, I've known Bonnie quite a number of years, and I look around and everybody's going, yep, that's what she told him, all right. They've spotted these characters dead on, and for folks who are not from Newfoundland to get this, now the accents aren't heavily done in the play, but where they're done pretty well, I gotta say, to their credit, and I've never before had the experience of being in a room with 2,500 other people, and they're all in tears. Every one of them. That's a unique experience. Especially when you consider they were all laughing their faces off 3 minutes earlier. But that's the kind of impact that play has on people. Just a remarkable job. They're obviously a great deal of talent in those playwrights and in the production crew that's put it off. because yeah, they've really created something that's just so unbelievable. I mean, it's so remarkable, and it's such a huge subject matter. You know, you start with 4 airplanes, and what was it, 19 guys? You know, who impacted something close to 3,000 lives immediately, and then indirectly affected essentially everyone on the planet. How do you take anything that relates to that and turn it into a musical? You know, that's beyond even imagining for most people. That these folks had that kind of vision and thought, you know, yeah, no, there's something here we can do. Is just, you know, again, it's a testament to their talent. Absolutely.
You know, before seeing this musical on Broadway, I didn't even know about Gander's involvement.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I live in Israel, like, and I didn't, like, I had no idea.
Right, yeah.
And now this musical is in Toronto on Broadway. It's going to London, Dublin, Australia.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a movie.
Yeah.
So now more and more people become aware of your contribution.
Yeah.
You know.
And it is and that's having an impact. We're seeing people coming to Gander because they've seen the play, or even if they haven't seen the play, but they've heard about the play, and that's led them to do a bit of research and check out news coverage that's available on YouTube and things like that, and they're going, I gotta go there, you know. And yeah, those folks are coming to central Newfoundland, and they're traveling around, and they're visiting the airport, and they're they're going around and taking pictures of themselves in front of the schools, and they're going around talking to local people and asking questions, and I think that's something that we're likely to see more of in the coming years. It's already started. You know, the come from away effect on tourism to central Newfoundland is already being felt.
And how do you deal with all this attention? I mean, people come from all over the world just to meet nice people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
Are you allowed to ever have a bad day?
And you know what? That's but yeah, that's a really good question. But I'll tell you what, it's never been on the scale of that before or since. But I know people in Gander who do come from away moments every day. On a very personal level, within the last 6 or 8 weeks, we had a couple that was staying at the hotel where I work. And she has some medical difficulties, make it very difficult for her to walk any distance because of she runs out of air. And her and her husband were, well, we'd like to go to the restaurant next door, but we don't have a car and it's too far to walk. So maybe we'll just stay in our room and order a pizza. Just as luck would have it, there were 2 clerks at the desk that day. So I turned to my coworker and said, can you watch the desk for 5 minutes? I'm going to give these folks a ride next door. I grabbed my car and gave them a ride. When I got off work at 7:30, I went over there and picked them up, brought them back to the hotel. They wouldn't have been able to go out for dinner that evening if they hadn't had some help. It was 5 or 6 minutes out of my day that made them a really nice evening. Folks in Gander, it's never going to be on that scale again, I hope. Yeah, let us hope the world never has another event that makes that kind of scale necessary. But people in Newfoundland, and it's not just Gander, it's all across this island, are still doing come from away moments every single day. It's part of It's part of being part of this place. You know, Gander is kind of an unusual community in Newfoundland because we don't have a coastal history. We don't have a resource-based history. You know, virtually every other community on this island has either a fishing history, a mining history, or a forestry history. If you eliminate all of the communities in Newfoundland that don't have those three things in their background, Gander's the only thing left. So we're really a unique kind of place in that, you know, I mean, our town was only founded at the end of World War II. But no matter where you go on the island, those communities were based on neighbors helping each other. The people in the outport fishing communities, if they couldn't rely on one another when times were hard, none of them were going to survive. So neighbors helped their neighbors in times of trouble. If there was someone in trouble at sea, it didn't matter who they were and whether you liked them or not. You gave aid. A sailor lost at sea was a sailor lost at sea, whoever he may be or wherever he may be from, you gave aid. It's just part of that culture. And that culture is very deeply ingrained in this place. And so every day, Newfoundlanders are doing come from away moments. Still going on today. And it's one of the things that makes this a great place to live.
Do you have any questions, Grace?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me think. Well, I guess we were talking to somebody at the airport recently, and they were saying that planes still sometimes do get, stranded here. And
Absolutely.
Especially working at the hotel, do you see that happen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was an incident just 2 or 3 weeks ago. There were actually 2 medical diversions into Gander International Airport 20 minutes apart.
Oh.
2 medical emergencies on planes that were over the Atlantic and diverted into Gander, and like I said, literally 20 minutes apart. That was, I think it was 520 odd people involved on the 2 flights together. And came into Gander Airport, and the local FBO operators were looking for hotel rooms and places to put people, and okay, are we going to stay at the airport, or are we going to go downtown and get hotel rooms, and that still happens, I'm going to say almost every week. Reg Wright would, up at the airport authority, would be the guy to talk to about that, and he'd be a great interview too, by the way.
Thank you.
Because I don't know Reg well, but I've known him for well over 20 years anyway. Okay. So when I first met him, he was working as a reporter for the local newspaper, long before he got into the airport side of things. But yeah, he'd be able to give you the more details on that. But yeah, we get planes here all the time. At the hotel where I work, it's not uncommon. For example, we had a guest, I'm going to say about a year ago, from the UK. They were on a flight that had left the UK, and they were headed for a vacation destination in the US. And she had a stroke on board. And they diverted into Gander and took her into the hospital here. And her husband stayed with us for the next 2 weeks while she recuperated enough to be able to be cleared to fly, to go home. And that's another one of those, if there was somebody from the hotel was going anywhere, and this gentleman needed a ride down to the hospital, well, yeah, hop in, we'll get you down there, So yeah, it was, and that's something that we still see in Gander because of the airport affiliation, and because of where this airport is, in terms in relation to the transatlantic flight paths. We still see planes diverted in here on quite a regular basis. Like I said, most of them are medical. Occasionally they're mechanical. Once in a blue moon, it's an unruly passenger who's had too much to drink, and winds up in front of a judge. Yeah, those can be very expensive drinks, because landing in a plane and taking it off again on an unscheduled basis is a fairly costly operation. And yeah, we've had people here face ordered court-ordered restitution of in the range between $25,000 and $50,000.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Well, you think about it now. If you've got a flight that is very nearly all of the flying hours for a flight crew, okay, well, on a transatlantic flight, if they have to make an unplanned diversion to Gander, by the time they land and that unruly person is taken off, okay, they're now going to burn twice as much fuel, because if you're going to fly from New York to London, you burn more fuel getting to 35,000 feet than you do the entire rest of the flight. Okay? So if you've got to do that twice, you're going to burn twice as much fuel on your flight. Jet fuel ain't cheap. Then you've got the time involved. If taking off from here and getting to the final destination means that now the flight crew doesn't have enough hours available to them, that flight crew has to book off and be off for 10 hours to rest before they can take off again. So now you're looking at every passenger needs a hotel room. Every passenger needs meal vouchers. You do that with a plane that's got 200 people on it. Yeah, you know what? You can burn through 50 grand in a big hurry. It doesn't. It's not much of a push for it to cost an airline $50,000 to divert, which is why insurance companies, So when people get unruly and result in diversions because of their own foolishness, judges tend to make them pay pretty high prices.
Yeah, understandably so.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have one last question, but I was trying to think of how to phrase it. I was really touched as you were speaking, about how everybody did what you kept saying. I just did a small thing, but it adds up in such a big way. But everybody, you drove a taxi at the time, so you would drive around and help people. The teachers often helped people at the schools. Even if you were a senior citizen unable to leave your home, at least you could donate something.
Right.
And I see a lot of young people today that kind of look at the world and see, oh, these problems are so big, I don't know what I can do to help. Having lived through what you lived through here, what would you say to that kind of thinking?
How do you eat an elephant?
How? I don't know.
One bite at a time. And that's what it is. I mean, when I can't go out and change the direction of the American presidency. I might like to, or I might not. I'll keep that to myself. But it doesn't matter because I don't have that capability. I have the capability to give somebody a ride from our hotel to the restaurant next door. And if I have that capability, I should do that. Because that's a nice thing to do for somebody.
So you do what you can.
Absolutely.
Roger, I have one more question. What did it feel like after these insane 5 days when suddenly all the plane people left? What was the atmosphere like in
it was like the town was deserted. So much because of course the town became entirely focused on looking after all of these folks. I mean, like I keep coming back to, everybody did something, even if it wasn't a big thing. Everybody did something, and when all of that activity stopped, everybody's like, okay, I feel like I ought to be doing something. How come I'm not doing anything? It was kind of a disconcerting feeling, and the town felt like it had been deserted, and it took a bit of time to adapt back from that, especially if you couldn't buy a toothbrush. But yeah, it was when everyone left. There were a lot of people, and as I alluded to earlier, a lot of people formed friendships during those days, and all their new friends just left. So yeah, it was. There were. As people were getting ready to go back to the airport and get on their planes, there were a lot of tears. A lot of heartfelt goodbyes and big hugs as people who had gotten to know each other under these just extraordinary circumstances were now going to go their own separate ways again. Because the emotions, of course, even outside of Gander, anywhere in the world, when you looked at the events of that week, those events had an emotional impact on everybody, all over the world. And the people of Gander responded to that by stepping up with offers to help. And when they didn't have that to turn to anymore, that's when people of Gander started feeling like everybody else in the world had already had, everybody else in the world had already had a week to get used to what CNN called the new normal, right? Ganderites hadn't had that week to adapt to thinking about that new normal because everybody was too busy, all these people to look after. Well, nuts and bolts and bread and butter. Get some food into people, get them where they need to go. Yeah, okay. And once they were we'd gotten them all back up to the airport and back on their flights and back on their way back to their lives, that's when we started having the time to respond the way other people all around the world had felt. So the mixed emotions of the saying goodbye to the new friends and the sense of finally coming to a point where, okay, now I've got to come to grips with how I feel about what happened in New York. That resulted in a lot of strong emotions. And you could definitely tell the difference around town. People were, making the transition back to, for the schools to go back to being classrooms, and the churches to go back to being places of worship that sat empty for most hours of the week. The church halls had been crammed full of people 24 hours a day for the whole 5 days. And now all of it, for the first time, they're empty the way they used to be. And, okay, what am I supposed to do in here? Like there's nothing left to do but sweep the floor. It was, at the end of it, as the planes departed, and once everybody was gone, there was a definite impact on people's, on the way people were thinking in those days, because I guess, like I say, I was just, we were behind the rest of the world by 4 days at that point, and adding those emotions on top of the emotions that had been running so high here that whole week. It brought a lot of people to places of reflection, and I know I would expect that a lot of the churches that first Sunday after everyone left, had a lot of conversations, from the ministers or among the parishioners themselves, about what it was like to have our town back, because, they're really, in those days, there wasn't much the town had that didn't get put on offer if it could be used to help.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about, or maybe something we forgot to address?
Yeah, we didn't ask, or yeah.
No, I don't think so. It's just, again, it's just such an example of what is really the Newfoundlanders' approach to their neighbors. Just blown up to huge scale. And it's something that everyone from every community all around Gander and within Gander itself, I think has great reason to be justifiably proud of.
Well, thank you so much for
You're welcome.